Stage 14 of the Giro d'Italia would take the riders to Lake Garda. A beautiful sunny day. On and off the bike they were in the Maglia Rosa and they were cheering on their heroes over the course of a 30-odd kilometre time trial, starting in Castiglione dell'Estiviere and finishing 31.2 kilometres to be exact, further up the road in Desenzano del Garda. Fairly flat, twisting and turning though, some challenging roads, much more one for the specialists in the second half of the long two-chapter time trial at this Giro d'Italia. Nothing too much on the profile, 31.2 kilometres against the clock, the second part of the race of truth. Just like in the first time trial to Perugia, over a slightly longer distance and on a harder course, Joseph Czerny was one of the early favourites, and he would be the first to finish, setting the fastest time that wouldn't stand for too long. The former Czech champion not having the legs he liked, and it'd be a homeboy, Edoardo Affini, minus his visor to the finish, freed from any sort of domestic responsibility and giving it a go. He'd finish just quicker. The former world time trial champion Tobias Foss was next up. Ineos Grenadiers doing their best. The Italian Affini from Mantova, starting the time trial just a few kilometres from where he was born, booted out of the hot seat by 4 seconds. Next up, the big star, Filippo Ganna. It had been a long time since Ganna had won a time trial. Just a few days before this one, he'd been sat in a hot seat thinking he'd won, and then Tadej Pogačar turned up. This time he would be well ahead of the competition that had ridden before, knocking their times out of the water and establishing his place on the hot seat almost a minute and a half quicker than his teammate Tobias Foss. Foss, a former world time trial champion, as I said, could do nothing but take his hat off to his teammate. He was heading for victory, or so he thought. Luke Platt was up there trying to threaten. Ganna's teammate Sheffield also riding well. But then Sheffield, who'd set the second fastest time on the way through, suffered a nasty crash on the way in. Took a lot of skin off his right side. And the young American riding the Giro, having to miss the American Nationals for which he'd be a co-favourite, finishing just over a minute and a half down on Ganna. So to Tierman Ardensman and the top 10 in the GC. 11 seconds down on Ganna, the first time check, well up on his rivals and heading up into 6th place in the general classification by the end of the day. A super ride from the Dutchman who started the Giro on the back foot. Then to the top 5. Best young rider Antonio Tiberi, white jersey on his back, and a big day in his progression as a GC contender. And he passed the test with flying colours. Right up there in the times on the day. Not losing any time, in fact gaining on some. Same can be said though of Ben O'Connor. A lot of work during the winter on his time trial, and Decathlon Âge2L Mondial continuing their improvement. O'Connor fighting to keep his 4th place. Top 3 then. Geraint Thomas needing 16 seconds to get the better of Dani Martinez and move back up to 2nd. Didn't enjoy his first time trial. He was looking for a better experience this time. And he started well. He was with Ardensman, 11 seconds down at the first time check, and looked to settle into his ride much better than the week before. By the time he reached the finish line, he was right up there. Geraint Thomas rolling back the years and producing a solid test against the clock. And with Dani Martinez losing time, Geraint Thomas was moving up into 2nd place in the GC. Martinez recovering after a slower start. He'd finished the day in 3rd. But where would Tadej Pogačar finish? Already assured, barring a complete disaster of keeping the pink jersey. He set off looking to try and upset Filippo Ganna again. But on this parcours, surely he couldn't. Flatter, one that was much more suited to the specialists. However, alarm bells were ringing after the first time check. 4 seconds quicker than the Italian champion. Surely it wasn't going to happen again. A nervous Ganna continued to look on. The second time check, just under 8 kilometres to go, there was a 14-second swing to the Italian. Pogačar 10 seconds down, but also at the same time riding a race that would see him gain more time in the GC. Finally, Ganna could celebrate. Finally, 3 years later, there will be a top Ganna sequel. A 7th stage win on the Giro D'Italia down the years for him. A first in 3 years. And Tadej Pogačar, in the meantime, another 2nd place. A tremendous ride and an extension of his lead. It's now well over 3 minutes, pushing 4 in the GC. All of that tension, drama, nerves released for Filippo Ganna. An emotional moment for the Italian. Back at his favourite race and back winning again 3 years later. A really popular win. And what a Giro Italia having in terms of stage wins. Ganna joining the Milan show. Ganna winning by almost half a minute ahead of Pogačar. Ahrensman with a TT performance of his life, finishing 3rd. Delight for Filippo Ganna on the shores of Lake Garda. The winner of stage 14, back on top. On top, going to the mountains, is Tadej Pogačar. 3:41 ahead of Geraint Thomas, with the hardest Queen stage coming 24 hours later. And Dani Martinez at almost 4 minutes. Moving up into the top 10 was Ahrensman in 6th. And Tadej Pogačar was yet again pretty in pink. The next stage is the hardest of the Giro d'Italia on paper. 222 kilometres. 5,600 metres of climbing, and despite late changes, still including some mighty mountains. The Mortirolo, not the hardest side, but it's still the Mortirolo, and then plenty of climbing above 2,000 metres to the finish in Livigno on the slope. Yes, a ski slope that's only just been tarmacked. If stage 14 was one for the time trial purists, this is a throwback Grand Tour stage. Mountain after mountain, distance and climbing. It's live on Eurosport, Discovery Plus, and if you're in the US, on Max.